AirFrance Flight 296Q. On June 26, 1988, an Air France Airbus A320 prepares for its big debut at the Habsheim Air Show. This is no ordinary flight. It's a demonstration of Airbus's brand new flagship aircraft and the cutting edge of aviation technology. The plane is loaded with 136 passengers, mostly journalists and contest winners, and a crew of 6. The plan is simple. Perform a low-altitude flyby at just 100 feet. Give the crowd a thrill, then climb away. However, Captain Michel Asseline descends to just 30 feet above the runway. The engine's down to idle for a slow, dramatic pass. The A320 glides over the crowd as thousands watch from below. Then, Asseline calls for full power to climb away. The engines spool up, but not fast enough. The trees at the end of the runway are approaching fast, too fast.
Tried to gain height.
The investigation revealed a handful of errors that turned the air show into a disaster. First, Captain Asseline flew an aircraft he barely knew. He only had 12 hours of flight time in the A320 and had never flown into Habsheim Airport before. Second, he flew just 30 feet above the ground, lower than the 100 planned. When he finally pushed the throttles forward, the engines needed 8 seconds to spool up to full power. But the A320's Alpha Floor Protection's 3-second delay meant it was too late. While everyone survived the impact, 3 passengers sadly died from smoke inhalation while trying to escape. Captain Asseline was later convicted of involuntary manslaughter and sentenced to 1 year in prison. The A320 would go on to become one of the safest aircraft ever built. But Flight 296Q remains a dark reminder that no system can compensate for poor decision-making in the cockpit. Typhoon Podol hammers the EVA Air Boeing 777 with 45-knot crosswinds as it approaches the runway on its third landing attempt at Taoyuan International Airport. The pilots commit and touch down early, engaging the reverse thrust, when a violent gust of wind catches the 777's massive wings and lifts the aircraft back into the air. With reverse thrust engaged mid-air, the aircraft couldn't climb and slammed back down onto the runway, suffering a significant impact. Aviation experts were baffled. How did the thrust reversers activate while still airborne? Multiple fail-safes are specifically designed to prevent this. Weight-on-wheel sensors should lock out reverser deployment, unless the aircraft is firmly on the ground. The conditions prompted another go-around. However, after already having 2 failed go-arounds, it was likely the 777 was running on minimum fuel levels. The pilots had no choice but to force it down. Miraculously, post-flight inspections revealed no structural damage to the airframe or landing gear. The aircraft returned to service immediately, though the incident raised serious questions about thrust reverser safety systems across the entire 777 fleet. This C-130 encountered something unusual on the taxiway. On September 27, 2025, a U.S. Air Force C-130 Hercules lands at Portland International Airport and is taxiing towards Atlantic Aviation. It's a routine military stop at a busy civilian airport. But what happens next is anything but routine. 30-year-old Adelaide Stone from Portland somehow managed to breach airport security and sprinted across the active taxiway towards the moving C-130, even climbing on board the aircraft. Military personnel inside the cargo bay immediately restrained her, reporting she appeared disoriented and alone. But how she bypassed multiple security checkpoints remains unclear. The incident triggered a full security review at PDX. Stone was arrested on the spot and booked into Multnomah County Jail, charged with second-degree criminal trespass and unlawful entry into a motor vehicle. The C-130 continued its mission without further incident. Princess Juliana International Airport in St. Maarten has earned worldwide fame for its dramatic low approaches over Maho Beach, where planes descend just feet above sunbathers' heads. Aviation enthusiasts and thrill-seekers flock here specifically to experience the roar of jet engines passing overhead. But what happened on this particular January afternoon pushed the limits even by Caribbean standards. A Paua Dominicana MD-83 descends towards runway 10, clearing beachgoers by just a couple feet. Spectators could practically touch the landing gear. The aircraft skims so low that plane spotters captured what would become one of the most extreme approaches ever filmed at this notorious airport. Aviation forums erupted with debate about whether the pilots violated minimum safe altitude regulations, or if this was simply aggressive but legal flying at an airport known for tight approaches. Paua Dominicana would be grounded permanently just 2 years later over financial issues and maintenance concerns. But on that January afternoon, they gave thrill seekers the show of a lifetime and a reminder of why Princess Juliana remains one of the world's most extreme airports. On April 9, 2023, a Ryanair Boeing 737-800 touches down at Dublin Airport after a routine flight from Liverpool. But as the plane decelerates on runway 28, sparks suddenly erupt from beneath the nose as the metal meets asphalt. Ryanair is infamous for hard landings, so much so that passengers sometimes applaud just for surviving the touchdown. But this wasn't pilot technique. One tire was completely missing, the other severely damaged. Ireland's Air Accident Investigation Unit released their final report in November 2024, revealing the truth. The crew had used the tiller, a steering mechanism designed for taxiing at high speed during the landing rollout. Combined with a challenging tailwind, the excessive steering force damaged the nose gear assembly, causing it to collapse. Ryanair downplayed the incident, calling it a minor technical issue, but it's safe to say the passengers probably agree otherwise. On May 26, 2022, a professional seaplane pilot, Anthony Yen, departs Williamsburg-Jamestown Airport in Virginia with a student on board. They're headed to Connecticut on an experimental sport flying boat. It should be a routine flight. Yen has logged countless hours training students in his seaplanes. He knows these aircraft inside out. Just 10 minutes after takeoff, at only 600 feet above the ground, the engine suddenly coughs a couple times and dies completely. They're surrounded by residential buildings and the dense Virginia forest with nowhere to go. Yen has only 40 seconds to find a solution, or they're going into the trees. Yen immediately scouted the surrounding area. Luckily, he spots a small cornfield nearby. It's not ideal, but it's their only shot. There's no time for second guessing, no time for a perfect setup. I spend a lot of time training my students for engine failures, Yen later explained, and more importantly, training them to always have a field in mind in case you lose an engine. FAA inspectors discovered a cracked fuel rail had killed fuel pressure. Equipment failure, not pilot error. This was a textbook emergency procedure, executed by a professional who practices exactly what he preaches. The F-35B Lightning II is one of the most technologically advanced aircraft ever built. Unlike conventional jets, it can land vertically like a helicopter, thanks to its innovative lift fan system and thrust vectoring nozzle. All powered by the massive Pratt & Whitney F-135 engine, one of the most powerful fighter jet engines in the world. On December 15, 2022, a brand new F-35B Lightning II was completing its final test flight before delivery to the U.S. military. The test pilot, a former Navy aviator with thousands of hours in advanced aircraft, begins the vertical landing sequence at a military test facility in Texas. It descends down to the runway in vertical landing mode. The aircraft touches down normally, but something goes horribly wrong.
Oh, he just crashed. Oh, shit.
The test pilot ejected at the perfect moment, right as the wings were leveled. His parachute deployed mere feet before impact, and he managed to walk away with minor injuries. However, the $100 million fighter jet was completely totaled. The investigation uncovered a terrifying flaw, a rare harmonic resonance issue in the Pratt & Whitney F-135 engine, creating catastrophic vibrations that caused the lift fan to fail as the aircraft neared the ground. Investigators discovered the engine had passed all previous screening procedures, but this failure had never been detected. Investigators realized this wasn't an isolated incident, it was a systemic flaw affecting the entire F-35B fleet. Dozens of F-35Bs were immediately grounded worldwide. For 3 months, the most advanced strike fighter in the U.S. arsenal sat idle while Pratt & Whitney engineers developed and tested a fix. The incident cost taxpayers over $100 million and exposed a critical vulnerability in an aircraft the military had already spent billions developing. A KC-135 Stratotanker closes in on an F-15E Strike Eagle somewhere over the Middle East. It's a routine nighttime refueling until the boom operator sees something extraordinary. Blue electrical plasma erupts across the tanker's windscreen and dances along the fighter's nose. This is St. Elmo's fire, nature's electric light show at 30,000 feet. The phenomenon occurs when static charges build up between the two aircraft in cloudy weather, creating luminous plasma in the strong electric field. Purple and blue bolts flash across the F-15E's external fuel tanks as the boom extends toward the receiver. While not dangerous to the crew, the metal fuselage acts as a Faraday cage, protecting everyone inside from electrical discharge. However, St. Elmo's fire can be a precursor to lightning strikes. Both aircraft completed the refueling successfully and continued their mission. But the boom operator captured footage few airmen will ever witness.